Okay, this is Paul Brigner. This is the North American Bureau Weekly Hangout, and we have a very special guest today, Lynn St, Amour, who is going to give us an update on a very timely topic. She has been involved in the WCIT. You were in Dubai, and I'm surprised you're back. You're probably terribly jet-lagged.
Came back for a PIR board meeting
and a board meeting, so lots going on. It's very generous of you to spend a couple minutes with us. We know you have to catch a plane in about 5 minutes, so we're not just going to get your input. We're not going to ask you questions because we don't have time for that, but we can discuss it afterwards with the Hangout. So what did you think of WCIT?
Well, I saw Avri flash by a moment ago. Avri was there as well. I think she left us a couple of days ago, and I just got back yesterday. So, you know, Avri can fill in fully on her impressions and developments as well. Well, I mean, first, obviously, we're not entirely comfortable with the process that's actually followed. It wasn't as open as we like those processes to be and believe they should be. But there was an awful lot of prep that was done ahead of time where we actually were allowed to put our voices and our submissions in. Coming out of the conference, I think we're probably not entirely surprised at where we ended up. I think the process was a little more divisive than I certainly would have expected going in. And I've participated in a lot of the UN process, participated in, I think, 4 separate WSIS prep comms, 2 separate WSISs, you know, WIGIGs, IGF, MAGs. So I have a lot of engagement in those processes. I've been to many plenty pods. And this was still a rougher process. I think positions were quite strong on both sides or all sides of the issue, and I think that kind of colored. It's awfully hard to go into negotiations when one party or several parties either say, I've only got X permission from my capital to negotiate to this point, I can't go beyond that. When somebody says this is a hard red line for me, and when somebody else says, I'm, you know, don't like the direction this conversation is going, if it continues going that way, I'm going to put my really aggressive proposal on the table. So I think it was much more about negotiations than deliberations or debates, and that was one of the big differences for me. You know, coming out at last count, and again, I've been in board meetings most of the day today, I think there were 88, 90 countries that signed on, another 55 or 60 that hadn't yet signed, but that is just because some of them want to go back to their capitals and continue their processes. Not even sure those numbers are entirely right, because a lot of nations will actually be committed to the ITRs by virtue of their support for an agreement to the ITU and the Constitution. So I think we'll need to take a little bit of time and pull some of those numbers apart to see what level of support it really had.
And since we're in North America here, the United States position and Canada, do you have any ideas about those two?
Yeah, they both said that they couldn't sign as it was stated. Every country has to go back to their country and ratify it. Okay. So that's another process that needs to take place as well. From, you know, sort of an internet community perspective, we need to wait and see exactly how some of the topics that were actually included in the treaty are actually treated. Yeah. Do they in fact open up the scope somewhat to other communities? Some of the things we're most happy about, though, is the fact that they were explicit in the fact that they do not address content. Okay. ICT was a term that was not ultimately included, so they remained with the previous terms, such as telecommunications and international telecommunications. ITT recommendations were not given mandatory status, which is good. We obviously support open voluntary standards. Some of the other things, such as numbering, was kept out. So, I mean, I think, and this is not about being defensive or protective about the internet model. We obviously support a really flexible, open, multi-stakeholder process, and embedding things in a nation treaty that's only going to be opened up periodically is really just, you know, frankly, less flexible and less adaptive over time than we'd like. So ISOC will be working with other members of the community that were there, and I said I'm sure Aubrey has you know, really good perspective and really good insight as well into the discussions to actually start to pull apart. So we had the matrix leading in to the conference. We'll actually have a matrix coming out, which actually starts to say these are some of the implications or possible implications of these particular treaty clauses. And Sally and
that's going to be very helpful. Yeah. Yeah, there's been a lot of great resources coming out of our public policy team.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of deliberation. I'm sure a lot of the topics that were of concern, no matter how they were resolved in the treaty, will continue to be with us as we go forward to WTPF next year, Honeypot in 2014. You know, one of the big takeaways for us is that we really want to take a lot of what we saw as the core issues, you know, which frankly weren't a surprise, but you get a much richer perspective when there are that many people, and particularly that many governments in the room, to really try and address and help them understand what some of the possible solutions or possible roadmaps are for some of the, you know, very real problems that they're facing. What we don't want to do is to just move from one policy forum to another policy forum and try and address the outputs of those policy forums, because that's not being nearly as proactive or effective in really helping to resolve the issues that, you know, at cause, at heart.
Okay. So in many cases, it sounds like there was a lot of good things that, I mean, maybe not good, but damage wasn't done that we thought might be done, and so it sounds like there was a little bit of a win in that regard. I didn't hear anything that you said that made me think something is in the treaty that is going to be a serious concern for us going forward, but we'll still have to analyze it, I guess, and look at the issues.
On how broadly some things are implemented. The security, for instance, the treaty actually gives member states a responsibility to ensure the security and robustness of their international telecommunications services.
Okay.
You know, how broadly that clause and other similar clauses are actually applied to other providers, of course, is one of the questions.
Yeah.
So I think that another question is what will ultimately the scope of the treaty be, depending on how, you know, widely it's actually ratified subsequent. And
okay.
I think there's still a lot of ground to settle.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested in hearing Aubrey's comments as well. And I don't know if anybody else that's on the call was there. So I look forward to looking at
Well, it sounds like even though
later.
the conference is over, it's still very much a developing process to see where it goes and how the countries, and especially in North America, how they now position themselves with regard to this treaty.
Yeah.
So, interesting. Well, from the Hangout, I see a lot of people have joined now. Thanks for joining. I know you have to catch a plane. We promised we'd have you out, so I don't know if you want. Do you want to hear any? I know you'd like to.
I'm leaving it incredibly close for flights. Everybody here thinks I'm a disaster, and nobody will stay with me and take the taxi to the airport. But this is actually getting.
Yeah, it is getting close. Well, this has been really just impressions. This is not like your official statement on the WCIT. This is kind of a real-time report here. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that is the case. We haven't had even time internally to do all the analysis we want to do. So we're going to be putting out documents that describe the WCIT in more detail. And
I do have one last comment. I'm very sorry for this feeling so one way and sort of saying my comments and then leaving, but one of the things that really struck me a lot at this process, I said having been through similar processes, was there were very internet knowledgeable, internet community people on many, many, many delegations. So we had our regional bureau managers there as well, participating. Michuki Mwengi was actually participating on the Kenyan delegation. Sebastian was actually a representative within the CETO, Latin American states, and the OAS. Aubrey was there. We had Olaf Kolkman, former IAB chair on the Dutch delegation, Axel Pavlik, the RIR RAPE CEO, was there. So we had many internet community people actually embedded in the delegations, which was extraordinarily helpful, and I think really talks to the high level of internet knowledge as so many of the delegations actually had, and why we were able to negotiate a treaty where you would spend hours talking about, you know, one particular word.
Right.
So
right.
that was just that was a significant difference from before, and I think something we will, continue to actually.
That is an
do
interesting
even a lot
development.
more of. Yeah.
Sure.
No, it
Well,
was
and a good thing.
very impressive.
Well, thank you for joining, and we hope you have a safe
Yeah,
trip.
thanks.
And given the situation, it's great that you had any time to spend with us. So thank you.
Sincere apologies, and I actually I really do feel like I'm throwing comments and leaving. I look forward to actually seeing the archive though, and any other
Sure,
comments or questions.
we'll continue here to discuss. So.
And I really appreciate your doing this too, Paul. I hope everybody else appreciates it, but I just appreciate the Hangouts, and I know a lot of other folks have
Thank you.
commented on them as well.
Okay, well, take care.
Great, thanks.
All right.